September 7th, 1996. Las Vegas, Nevada. 11:15 p.m. The night air is warm, the strip is alive, and a black BMW 750IL is moving through traffic, headed east on Flamingo Road. In the passenger seat sits one of the most famous men on the planet. He doesn't know it yet, but this is the last car he'll ever ride in. What happened in the next 4 minutes would shake the world, ignite a conspiracy, and remain officially unsolved to this day. And what most people don't know is that the danger didn't start that night. It had been building for years. By 1996, Tupac Amaru Shakur wasn't just a rapper.
He was a phenomenon, a lightning rod, a man who somehow made millions of people feel like he was speaking directly to them, to their pain, their anger, their hope. But with that kind of fame comes something else. Enemies. Tupac wasn't careful about making them. He was loud about his beef, loud about his opinions, loud about everything.
And in the world he moved through, that loudness had a price. In 1994, he was shot 5 times in a New York recording studio lobby, robbed, left for dead on the floor. He survived. But something changed after that night. He became harder, more paranoid, more certain that people were out to get him. And he wasn't wrong.
After serving 8 months in prison on a sexual assault conviction, a conviction he always maintained was unjust, he was bailed out by Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight. The bail? $1.4 million. And just like that, Tupac Shakur was a death row artist. Now, this matters because Death Row wasn't just a record label.
It was a world, a dangerous one, a world with its own rules, its own wars, its own body count, and Tupac had just walked directly into the middle of it. In the mid-1990s, the East Coast and West Coast hip-hop rivalry wasn't just about music. It was territorial, it was personal, and by 1996, it was lethal.
On one side, Death Row Records, Los Angeles, Suge Knight, the West. On the other, Bad Boy Entertainment, New York, Sean Puff Daddy Combs, Christopher Wallace, known to the world as the Notorious B.I.G., the East. The feud had been simmering for years, shaded disses in interviews, coded threats in lyrics, escalating tension at industry events.
But then, Tupac lit the match. He publicly accused Biggie of knowing about the 1994 robbery, the one where Tupac was shot in the lobby of Quad Recording Studios. He didn't just hint at it, he screamed it. He put it on wax. He put it in interviews. He put it on his face every time someone brought up the East Coast. Whether the accusation was true or not, it didn't matter anymore. The feud had moved beyond music, beyond beef, beyond words.
People around both camps were watching, calculating. And in the background, another figure lurked. The South Side Crips, a Los Angeles street gang with deep ties to the Death Row universe. They weren't just background noise. They were a presence, and they had their own grievances, their own scores to settle. Investigators would later ask a simple question. On the night of September 7th, 1996, was Tupac's death a planned execution or a crime of opportunity that spiraled out of control? The answer to that question depends entirely on what happened before the shooting, and what happened before the shooting started here. September 7th, 1996. The MGM Grand Garden Arena, Las Vegas. Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon, a heavyweight title fight. Tupac attended with Suge Knight and an entourage of Death Row associates. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. Tyson by knockout.
But what happened after the fight is what we need to talk about. Because in the lobby of the MGM Grand, a confrontation broke out. A man named Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, a member of the Southside Crips, was spotted by members of the Death Row entourage.
There were accusations, old beef. Someone said Anderson had robbed a Death Row associate weeks earlier. Tupac saw him, and according to witnesses, Tupac threw the first punch. What followed was a brief, brutal brawl in the casino lobby. Anderson went down. Security cameras captured it all.
And then it was over.
The group left. Tupac and Suge Knight headed back to Suge's BMW. The plan, go to Club 662, a nightclub Suge owned. A celebration was waiting. The night wasn't over. It felt like it was just beginning. The convoy moved through the Las Vegas Strip. Multiple cars. Suge's black BMW 750IL leading the way.
Tupac was in the passenger seat, no seatbelt. He leaned out of the sunroof at a stoplight, grinning, waving at a car full of women, alive, loud, present. The light turned green. They moved. It was somewhere around the intersection of Flamingo Road and Colville Lane.
A white Cadillac pulled up alongside the BMW. The window rolled down. And then, gunshots. Multiple rounds, in rapid succession. The BMW swerved, lurched, skidded to a halt on the median. Suge Knight, somehow, was only grazed by a bullet fragment. Tupac Shakur took 4 rounds.
2 in the chest, 1 in the arm, 1 in the thigh. The white Cadillac drove away. No plates recovered. No suspects stopped. Just tail lights disappearing into the Las Vegas night. The scene was chaotic. Suge Knight, bleeding from the head, was trying to drive Tupac to the hospital. He didn't wait for an ambulance.
He drove the BMW himself, shot himself, with Tupac unconscious in the seat beside him. When police and paramedics arrived, they found a war zone on wheels. 13 bullet casings, a shattered window, blood, and no white Cadillac anywhere in sight.
Tupac was rushed to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. He was alive, barely. He was placed in intensive care. His mother, Afeni Shakur, flew in from Atlanta. The world waited. For 6 days, the bulletins were cautiously hopeful. He was fighting. He had fought before and survived.
And then, on September 13th, 1996, at 4:03 p.m., Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. He was 25 years old. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department launched an official investigation, and almost immediately, the case began to unravel in strange ways. The white Cadillac was never found.
The shooter was never identified. And despite a casino full of people, despite security cameras, witnesses, law enforcement presence all over the Strip that night, no one was ever arrested. That's not just unusual. For one of the most high-profile murders in American history,
That's extraordinary. Investigators had a suspect almost immediately, Orlando Anderson, the man who'd been beaten in the lobby of the MGM Grand just hours before the shooting. Anderson denied involvement. He was never charged. He died in 1998, killed in a gang-related shooting in Compton, California.
Taking whatever he knew with him. But here's where it gets complicated. Multiple witnesses were present at the shooting. Some gave statements, some didn't. Some gave statements that directly contradicted each other. Suge Knight told police he didn't get a good look at the shooter. Strange, given that the car pulled up directly beside him.
He provided minimal cooperation with investigators. And then there was this. In the days following the shooting, a Las Vegas police officer, a man named David Mack, came under scrutiny. Mack had alleged ties to the South Side Crips through an associate named Dwayne Cafe D. David. Mack was later convicted on unrelated charges, bank robbery, and sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. His name would resurface in the investigation years later, much later. In 2023, 27 years after the murder, Dwayne Keefe Davis was arrested and charged with Tupac's murder.
Davis, by then in his 60s, had spent years making statements, in interviews, in a memoir, in which he essentially described being in the white Cadillac on the night of the shooting. He claimed he handed a gun to his nephew, Orlando Anderson, through the car window. The grand jury agreed there was enough to go to trial. But questions remained. Because if Davis was talking, and had been talking for years, why did it take 27 years to charge him? Investigators would later question everything, and so should you. When a case goes unsolved for decades, theories fill the void. Some are grounded in evidence, some are pure speculation, and some fall somewhere in between, uncomfortable, unresolved.
The most straightforward reading,
Orlando Anderson and the Southside Crips retaliated for the beating at the MGM Grand. A pride-fueled, impulsive revenge killing carried out within hours of the brawl. This is the theory law enforcement largely settled on. It's also the theory that leaves the most questions unanswered.
Because if it was that simple, if it was just a spontaneous gang hit, why did it take nearly 30 years to make a single arrest? This one is darker. Conspiracy theorists, and some journalists and investigators, have long asked whether someone within Tupac's own inner circle knew what was coming.
The routing of the convoy that night, the decision to travel without adequate security, the suspicious absence of a proper escort for one of the most famous men on Earth. Why was there no security detail? Why were the vehicles not bulletproofed? These questions have never been satisfactorily answered.
Former LAPD detective Russell Poole spent years investigating the case and became convinced that corrupt officers were involved. His investigations pointed toward David Mack and his associate Dwayne Davis. He believed the murder was carried out with inside knowledge or inside help.
Poole died in 2015 during a meeting with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department while trying to present his findings. He suffered a heart attack in the conference room. His files passed to others. His theory didn't die with him. The most explosive theory, the most contested.
The suggestion made by Tupac's mother, his associates, and many in his camp that the East Coast-West Coast rivalry escalated to the point of murder, that the death was connected somehow to the Bad Boy Records world. Bad Boy and Biggie were never officially linked to the crime. The Notorious B.I.G. was himself murdered just 6 months later, March 1997, in a strikingly similar drive-by shooting in Los Angeles. His murder also remains officially unsolved. Two of the biggest names in music history murdered within 6 months of each other. Neither case ever fully closed. What are the odds? The answer to that question has haunted investigators, journalists, family members, and fans for nearly 30 years. And it's a question we still don't have a clean answer to. Here is what we know for certain. On September 7th, 1996, a man got into a car in Las Vegas, Nevada. He was 25 years old. He was laughing. He leaned out of a sunroof and waved at strangers. And 4 minutes later, he was dying. We know that the shooter fired from a white Cadillac. We know the car vanished. We know that for 27 years, no one was charged. We know that in 2023, Dwayne Davis was arrested and faces trial. But here's what we don't know. We don't know who else was in that car. We don't know who gave the order. We don't know if the beating at the MGM Grand was the real motive or if it was just the trigger for something that was already in motion. We don't know whether Tupac's death was an impulsive act of gang violence or the final move in a calculated, premeditated plan. And we don't know why, in a city bristling with security cameras, with law enforcement everywhere, with hundreds of witnesses nearby,
Nobody saw anything worth reporting for nearly 3 decades. Tupac Shakur was one of the most documented human beings on the planet. His voice, his face, his words, all of it is preserved. He predicted his own death in his music. He talked about not living to see 30. He lived as though each day was borrowed time. Maybe he knew something the rest of the world didn't. What's left behind isn't just music. It's a mystery, a murder case that exposed the rotten seams between art and violence, between fame and danger, between a city that never sleeps and a justice system that, in this case, moved slower than shadows. Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead at 4:03 p.m. on September 13, 1996. His murder is officially listed as an open homicide. A trial date for Dwayne Davis has been set. But the full truth? It may still be out there, somewhere in the Las Vegas night, waiting.